Modern women today are struggling not because life has become harder, but because comfort has replaced resilience and validation has replaced self-worth. And if you feel like today's world is filled with people who break down over the smallest challenges, you're not imagining it. There's a real shift happening, and it's affecting relationships, careers, and identity on a massive scale. Let's break down exactly why so many modern women can't handle real life anymore. One of the biggest reasons modern women struggle with real life is the silent and underestimated addiction to comfort. This isn't the kind of comfort that comes from stability or safety. It's the type that removes challenge, shields from discomfort, and makes even minor inconveniences feel like major problems. When a person grows up constantly protected from struggle, failure, and emotional distress, they never build the internal strength needed to navigate real-life adversity. And this is exactly what's happening today. A lifestyle filled with ease, technology, entertainment, and instant gratification has created an environment where emotional muscles are underdeveloped, almost like a limb that's never been used. You can't expect strength from something that's never been tested. Modern society rewards emotional softness while discouraging resilience. If something feels difficult, the message is to avoid it. If someone hurts your feelings, the message is to cut them off. If life feels overwhelming, the message is to step back and call it self-care. And while boundaries, healing, and mental health are important, they've been weaponized into excuses to escape even the smallest challenges. As a result, discomfort feels painful and struggle feels intolerable. Real life demands endurance, but comfort teaches dependency. This creates a generation that is emotionally delicate, not because they are weak by nature, but because they were never expected to be strong. This comfort addiction also shows up in how conflict is handled. Real life requires uncomfortable conversations, admissions of fault, and the ability to negotiate. But comfort teaches avoidance. Instead of confronting issues, many women today choose to ghost, disappear, block, or shut down. Avoidance feels easier in the moment, but it makes emotions more fragile over time. Every avoided conflict becomes a missed opportunity to grow emotional resilience. You can't build confidence by running from what challenges you. You build it by facing discomfort and realizing you can survive it. Another factor is emotional overstimulation. Technology has created constant access to entertainment, validation, shopping, and social interaction. Everything is easy, everything is instant, everything is available with one tap. But this overstimulation reduces the ability to tolerate boredom, patience, or effort. When the brain becomes accustomed to instant pleasure, real life feels slow and frustrating. When pleasure is easy, discipline feels impossible. When dopamine is constant, resilience becomes rare. So the moment real life demands patience, consistency, sacrifice, or hard work, many women feel overwhelmed because their minds aren't conditioned for sustained effort. Comfort also affects identity. When someone learns to measure their worth by how easy life feels, anything difficult feels like a threat. Many modern women see stress, challenge, or discomfort as signs that something is wrong with their lives. But in reality, these are normal parts of the human experience. Real life is unpredictable. Real life is demanding. Real life doesn't adjust itself to your emotions. And without emotional resilience, everything feels heavier than it actually is. Even small issues like criticism, rejection, boundaries, or responsibility begin to feel unbearable. In relationships, comfort addiction leads to unrealistic expectations. Many women today want the rewards of connection without the resilience required to maintain it. The moment conflict arises, the tendency is to assume the relationship is wrong rather than understanding that conflict is a natural part of any emotional bond. This fragile mindset sabotages relationships before they even have a chance to grow, and over time it trains the mind to avoid intimacy, commitment, and accountability, all because they require effort and emotional endurance. The deepest problem with comfort addiction is that it creates fragility disguised as empowerment. Many modern women are taught to prioritize feelings over growth. They are told they are strong, while being simultaneously shielded from experiences that actually build strength. This creates a fragile confidence that collapses under pressure because it was never built on resilience. Real strength doesn't come from comfort. It comes from handling discomfort, overcoming challenges, and facing life without expecting it to be easy. A major reason many modern women struggle with real life is the increasing avoidance of accountability. Accountability is uncomfortable because it forces a person to confront the truth about their behavior, choices, and patterns. It demands self-reflection, emotional discipline, and the maturity to acknowledge when you are the problem, not the world around you. But today's culture has made accountability feel like an attack instead of a pathway to growth. It's easier to blame circumstances, people, or society than it is to look in the mirror and admit your own contribution to the situation. And when accountability is rejected, self-awareness never develops. Modern society has created an environment where responsibility is optional. If something goes wrong, you're encouraged to identify the external cause rather than your own role. Instead of asking, "What could I have done differently?" the narrative becomes, "It wasn't my fault." This mindset grows stronger when friends, influencers, and online spaces reward victimhood. When a person gets sympathy, praise, or validation for presenting themselves as the one who was wronged, there is no incentive to change. Accountability feels unnecessary because blaming others produces emotional comfort. But the price of this comfort is personal stagnation. Avoidance of accountability also shows up in the refusal to accept consequences. Real life is built on cause and effect. Every action has a reaction. Every choice leads to a result. If you choose poorly, life will reflect that. But instead of acknowledging the consequences of their decisions, many women today externalize blame. If a relationship fails, they point to the partner. If a career stalls, they blame their environment. If friendships collapse, they blame betrayal or negative energy. The possibility that their own behavior contributed rarely enters the conversation. This selective blindness prevents emotional maturity. Another dimension of avoiding accountability is the rise of emotional rationalization. Whenever someone feels bad about a situation, they justify their emotions rather than examine their choices. Feelings become facts, emotions become truth. And this emotional-centered worldview makes responsibility feel irrelevant. If a woman doesn't feel at fault, then in her mind she isn't. Emotional reasoning replaces logical evaluation. The problem is that emotions change, but consequences remain. When accountability is avoided, the same patterns repeat because the root cause is never addressed. This avoidance also weakens resilience. When someone refuses to take responsibility, they lose control over their life. If everything is someone else's fault, then everything is also someone else's responsibility to fix. This creates a powerless mindset. Real life becomes overwhelming because the individual hasn't learned how to influence their own outcomes. Accountability is empowering because it gives you ownership. Avoiding it leaves you emotionally dependent and constantly disappointed. You can't handle real life if you believe that real life is always happening to you rather than being shaped by you. In relationships, lack of accountability becomes even more evident. Many women demand emotional intelligence, communication, and maturity from others, but rarely apply the same standards to themselves. They want partners to apologize, adjust, grow, and take responsibility while dismissing their own mistakes as reactions or justifiable behaviors. This double standard destroys emotional balance. Healthy relationships require both people to own their actions, acknowledge their flaws, and correct their patterns. Without accountability, conflicts escalate, trust breaks down, and partners become emotionally exhausted. Avoiding responsibility also impacts personal growth. Growth requires honest self-evaluation. You cannot improve what you refuse to admit. When accountability is rejected, self-development becomes impossible. The person remains stuck in the same cycle of mistakes, repeating the same behaviors, blaming the same external factors, and wondering why life doesn't change. This creates emotional frustration and confusion because they expect progress without putting in the internal work that produces it. Culturally, accountability has been reframed as criticism. Many women today see correction as disrespect, disagreement as hostility, and constructive feedback as judgment. This mindset comes from being overly protected from discomfort. If someone has never been challenged or disciplined, any form of correction feels like an attack. But real life doesn't filter feedback to protect your feelings. Real life gives consequences, not comfort. When someone isn't used to accountability, those consequences feel harsh and unfair even when they are logical. One of the most damaging shifts in modern society is how validation from social media has replaced the need for real-world resilience. Social platforms have become the primary source of self-worth for many women, and this dependence on external approval has weakened emotional strength in ways most people don't even realize. When likes, comments, and followers become the measurement of value, the ability to handle criticism, rejection, or failure in real life begins to fade. Social media teaches instant acceptance. Real life demands earned respect. The gap between these two experiences creates a fragile mindset. Social media validation is addictive because it offers immediate emotional rewards. A photo, a story, or a post can generate praise within minutes. This constant flow of attention becomes a substitute for authentic self-esteem. Instead of building confidence through skills, discipline, character, and personal achievements, many women rely on digital applause to feel good about themselves. This creates a form of emotional dependency that weakens the mind. When confidence is borrowed from an audience, it disappears the moment that audience stops validating. Real-life situations then feel threatening because they don't provide that instant reassurance. The curated nature of social media also creates unrealistic expectations about life. Everything online looks easy, effortless, and glamorous. Challenges are rarely shown. Failure is often hidden. Hard work is minimized. As a result, women begin to believe that life should be smooth and uncomplicated. When reality confronts them with difficulty, they feel unprepared. They compare their real struggles to someone else's filtered success, and this comparison destroys resilience. Social media makes ordinary life feel like failure because it only highlights the best moments of others. Another issue is that social media encourages emotional overexposure without emotional responsibility. Many women share every feeling online and receive instant sympathy, but they never learn to process emotions internally. Instead of developing coping mechanisms, patience, or emotional regulation, they outsource their feelings to strangers on the internet. This creates a habit of seeking comfort rather than developing strength. Validation becomes a bandage, not a solution. And when real-life problems arise, problems that cannot be solved by posting about them, a sense of helplessness follows. Social media also distorts interpersonal relationships. Real-life interactions require empathy, communication, compromise, and accountability. Online interactions require none of that. If someone disagrees or triggers discomfort, they can be blocked with one tap. This creates a habit of escaping conflict rather than resolving it. Many women bring this same mindset into real life, where blocking and avoiding are not functional strategies. Instead of working through disagreements, the instinct becomes to run or shut down. This avoidance weakens emotional resilience and damages the ability to maintain healthy relationships. There is also a deeper psychological effect. Social media trains the brain to seek quick emotional rewards. Real-life rewards require patience. Careers, relationships, fitness, education, financial success. None of these happen instantly. They demand consistency, discipline, and effort. But when someone is used to instant emotional satisfaction online, delayed gratification in real life feels frustrating. This is why many women struggle to stick with hard goals. They're conditioned for fast results, not long-term commitment, and when the results don't come quickly, discouragement sets in. The pressure to maintain an online persona also creates emotional strain. Many women feel obligated to present a perfect version of themselves, always confident, always happy, always successful. This masking prevents them from acknowledging their real issues. They hide their insecurities instead of confronting them. They polish their image instead of developing their character. And over time, this disconnect between the online self and the real self creates emotional instability. It becomes harder to handle real life because real life doesn't match the filtered identity they've crafted. Lastly, social media has normalized superficial validation. Compliments are easy to get online, but they don't build depth. Real-world validation is based on behavior, integrity, effort, and value. When someone becomes accustomed to easy validation, they struggle when real life requires improvement, accountability, or personal change. They expect praise without performance. They expect acceptance without effort. And when life doesn't cater to these expectations, it feels harsh and unfair. One of the most significant challenges modern women face when it comes to handling real life is the rise of an entitlement mindset. Entitlement creates the expectation that life should be easy, accommodating, and rewarding without requiring effort. Many women today feel that because they are deserving, they should automatically receive success, admiration, comfort, and emotional support. The problem is that reality doesn't operate on entitlement. It operates on action, discipline, and persistence. Expecting life to meet unearned demands sets the stage for frustration, disappointment, and emotional instability. Entitlement often begins in childhood and adolescence when people are raised in environments that overprotect and overvalidate. When someone is consistently told they are special, unique, or inherently deserving, they internalize the belief that the world owes them. They are praised for effort rather than results, shielded from discomfort, and provided instant gratification. Over time, this belief system becomes rigid. When adulthood introduces real consequences and expectations, the mindset clashes with reality. Challenges, failures, and criticism are perceived as personal attacks rather than natural parts of growth, because entitlement teaches that life should revolve around one's feelings and desires. This mindset also affects professional life. Many women expect promotions, recognition, or respect without understanding that these achievements require hard work, consistency, and skill development. When the desired outcomes don't come instantly, frustration builds, and self-worth becomes tied to the gap between expectations and reality. Entitlement blurs the line between ambition and unrealistic expectation. The drive to succeed exists, but it is often overshadowed by a desire for external validation and a belief that effort alone should guarantee rewards. This disconnect undermines resilience and leads to emotional exhaustion. Relationships are another area where entitlement is highly visible. Some women expect constant attention, affection, and emotional labor from partners without reciprocating the same energy. They demand validation, loyalty, and understanding while overlooking the responsibilities that come with a committed connection. This imbalance creates tension because relationships require mutual effort and compromise. Entitlement turns natural give and take into a one-sided expectation, and when partners fail to meet these expectations, frustration and disappointment become inevitable. Real-life intimacy cannot thrive in an environment where one side assumes the world exists to serve them. Entitlement also interferes with personal development. When someone believes they deserve success without effort, they are less likely to invest in the necessary skills, discipline, and emotional growth required to handle life's challenges. They may avoid responsibility, dismiss constructive criticism, and rely on others for guidance instead of cultivating independence. Life does not reward entitlement, it rewards preparation, perseverance, and competence. Without these qualities, even simple challenges feel overwhelming because the person is unprepared to face them. A critical consequence of entitlement is the avoidance of discomfort. Life demands patience, sacrifice, delayed gratification, and the willingness to endure challenges. Entitled individuals see these requirements as unfair burdens rather than necessary steps toward growth. They may quit when things get hard, become defensive when challenged, or blame circumstances for their shortcomings. This avoidance prevents the development of resilience and reinforces a fragile mindset. Over time, entitlement becomes self-perpetuating because each unhandled difficulty reinforces the belief that life is unjust rather than that one needs to adapt. Social media and cultural messaging amplify entitlement. Constant exposure to curated success stories, influencer lifestyles, and idealized versions of reality makes it easy to believe that success should come effortlessly. The gap between perceived reality and personal experience creates frustration. When achievements are delayed, when effort is required, or when life becomes inconvenient, the entitlement mindset interprets these normal realities as personal failure or injustice. Instead of cultivating patience, discipline, and strategy, the individual feels trapped, resentful, and overwhelmed. Entitlement also distorts emotional expectations. Many women assume their feelings, desires, and comfort should be prioritized above all else. When this does not happen, they experience disproportionate disappointment or anger. Emotional maturity is undermined because the person interprets life's challenges as attacks instead of opportunities to grow. Handling setbacks, criticism, and stress requires perspective and self-discipline, qualities that entitlement actively discourages. A major reason modern women struggle to handle real life is their dependency on external support without developing internal strength. Many women have been conditioned to rely on others, friends, family, partners, or society for emotional stability, guidance, and validation. While support systems are important, leaning on them as a substitute for personal development creates vulnerability. Real life requires self-reliance, problem-solving skills, and emotional resilience, none of which can be outsourced. When the safety net disappears, dependency becomes a liability, leaving the individual unprepared to face challenges independently. This dependency often begins in early life. When people grow up in environments where parents, caregivers, or mentors solve problems for them, they learn that effort and initiative are optional. Instead of cultivating decision-making skills and coping mechanisms, they are taught to seek advice, comfort, or intervention. Over time, this mindset carries into adulthood. Women may rely on partners to manage conflicts, on friends to validate their emotions, or on social circles to define their self-worth. When life presents situations where no external support is available, the lack of internal resources becomes evident, and the emotional response is often panic, frustration, or helplessness. External dependency also undermines personal growth. Real development comes from facing challenges, making mistakes, and learning from experience. When women outsource these experiences to others, they avoid the discomfort necessary for growth. For example, relying on a partner to solve financial issues, career challenges, or emotional conflicts may provide temporary comfort but prevents the acquisition of skills and confidence. Over time, this pattern creates a cycle of reliance, stagnation, and insecurity. The individual becomes skilled at seeking solutions externally, but remains unprepared to solve problems independently. In relationships, this dependency creates imbalance and tension. Many women expect partners to provide emotional stability, decision-making guidance, and constant reassurance, while neglecting to cultivate their own emotional or practical capabilities. This places an undue burden on the partner and fosters resentment, as relationships require mutual contribution, not one-sided support. Dependency also teaches passivity. Instead of taking initiative, women may wait for solutions to arrive from external sources. This passive approach is incompatible with the demands of real life, which rewards proactive behavior and accountability. Social media and cultural influences reinforce this dependency. Online platforms offer validation, advice, and constant interaction, making it easy to outsource problem-solving and emotional support. Complaints can be shared and sympathy received, advice can be sought from strangers, and self-worth can be measured by likes and comments rather than personal achievement. While these mechanisms feel comforting, they create a false sense of security. Life outside the digital world does not provide instant affirmation or guaranteed solutions. When faced with real challenges, those who have relied on external validation are often ill-equipped to respond effectively. Another effect of dependency is a lack of resilience. Real-life obstacles, financial struggles, career setbacks, interpersonal conflicts require inner strength, critical thinking, and emotional endurance. When women are conditioned to depend on others, they are less likely to develop these qualities. The moment external support is unavailable, small setbacks feel catastrophic. Without self-reliance, patience, and problem-solving ability, they interpret challenges as insurmountable instead of solvable. This perpetuates a cycle of fear, avoidance, and emotional fragility. Dependency also limits accountability. When someone relies heavily on external support, it becomes easy to shift responsibility for outcomes. Failures are blamed on others rather than examined as opportunities for learning. This avoidance of responsibility prevents growth, reinforces fragile thinking, and deepens the gap between expectations and reality. Emotional maturity cannot flourish in an environment where external dependence substitutes for self-discipline and internal problem-solving. Ultimately, dependency without personal growth keeps women trapped in cycles of insecurity, passivity, and emotional instability. The reliance on external validation, guidance, or support may provide short-term comfort, but fails to prepare them for the demands of real life, which require adaptability, independence, and consistent self-reliance.